I'm sorry to be using a fancy newish word or unusual word, but what I'm trying to explain with this video and some subsequent videos is why we have, not only in the United States but in other countries, a tendency to have the worst people, the least qualified people, the least suitable people to lead the country, to be the political leaders, or also the, what you could say, the business elite, or the but right now in our country those are pretty much merged together. So kakistocracy comes from the root, the kaka, which is, shit. And but it doesn't have to be. There are many ways to describe our current situation, but what I'm trying to emphasize in these videos is the distance between the people we should have leading us and the people we do have leading us. And to explain this, I'm going to take a few detours which you may or may not have patience with. But one of them is that I think we have an inadequate theory of society, of our social being as human beings, and then also on top of that, our politics. So if we don't understand our politics or how society works, we can't have a good and thoughtful way to create a better politics, a politics that leads us toward the future, toward reality and the future. In other words, realizing that we can't bend reality to fit exactly our fantasies and but still we move toward a better situation that we agree upon as a people that is somewhat better. And one of the elements to understanding, in my opinion, society is understanding semiotics. Semiotics is a branch of linguistics that has been used and maybe misused at certain points in the last 125, 130 years, since it really was developed in the late 19th century and early 20th centuries. But anyway, we are sign using animals. And so our use of signs is a way that we communicate with each other, and it's something that because we have individual minds that are different, we are differ, both in through our course of our lives, but also among each other. We need to have a society. We need to communicate with each other via, among other things, signs. So what signs are is the combination of a sound or a visual representation, a letter, with a signified something that we mean, that we attempt to communicate with someone else. So they require production, in other words, saying something, an act, and they also require an act of reception and interpretation. And signs are not just in language, they're also in our visual communications mediums, and also in how we, like right now, how I'm using my hands. I am signing in different ways, or I'm not consciously signing, but I'm creating paralinguistic things around language, emphases and so forth and so on, by the expression of my face and also my hands and other things. And the thing about signs is that the symbols, which are one category of signs, which language is made up of symbols, are arbitrarily related to the thing we're trying to represent. In other words, through either our cultural practices, we learn that this animal is a dog, so we refer it to a dog, and we talk with other people referring to a dog, but also specific dogs. For instance, I could have my dog named Charles Barkley, as this particular example gives, or some other name, and we make these things up. So this is an element of creativity, both in culture but also individually. And you can see then how both language evolves, but through over many years, but also even within the course of our lifetimes, that we evolve our own subvariants of the language through the arbitrariness of signs. We shade meanings, we create some new meanings within a context of a cultural grammar, a cultural vocabulary. But not only do we represent some reality outside ourselves or some fixed set of feelings and thoughts we have inside ourselves with words, but we perform a reality. We create a reality through, among other things, language. And these performances, this is an observation made in 1955 by J.L. Austin, where you do things with language, and language creates our reality. So this is something that it seems when I say it, it seems intuitively obvious, but at the same time, we don't have social theories that really integrate this, at least in a way that I think is useful to understand our politics, understand our social reality. So an example of a performative utterance is, for instance, say, I'll promise to do something. I admit I was foolish. To thank someone. Also, there are people who have special roles in our society that perform marriages, for instance, justices of the peace, priests, rabbis, so forth and so on. So all of these performances create a new reality. So your life is a series of performances of different ways. And you have a role in shaping those by promising people some things, by developing relationships based on the things that you say. These performances are part of your reality. And this is as opposed to constative statements that are statements about a factual world. You're saying, the truck is over there, whatever, the cat is a calico cat, any of those things that are something that can be actually evaluated as true or false. A performative is a creation. It's a new thing that cannot be evaluated according to truth and falsehood, except later on when someone said, well, you promised you'd do that and you didn't do it. So that at the time of utterance, it's not necessarily true or false. And this leads to, this is a famous book from the 1960s, The Social Construction of Reality, where reality is constructed by people in society through the various cultures. We have, thousands of cultures in the world. They're created by people. And so this seems, when I say it, it's intuitively obvious, but people tend to think of their social context as being like a thing that's factual, when in fact it's constructed by people. Now, this concept was used to argue against genetic determinism, a bunch of different other things, but it's still also tells us about the performance of life in everyday world and how we decide to perform using, among other things, language. The tool of language is very powerful, and it's one of the ways we create that social reality or change it in ever so slight ways as part of our version, our little subculture of the subculture that we live in. I don't think this theory has been carried far enough when we're talking about all of the institutions of our society, the legal profession and also political professions, or the institutions of government. They're all performing different kinds of reality and constructing social reality in formalized ways, and that's often why there's a relationship with being a lawyer and also being a politician, because the politicians are creating a reality for society based on written documents. I don't think the implications of this have been nearly explored enough. And here's another academic paper that touches on this area of using language as a performance that creates a new social reality. Now, getting back to Kakistocracy in this particular video, so Donald Trump and Elon Musk are proficient liars, and they also produce lots of language. They own social media platforms, and they are constantly producing language and performing from a position often of power, a political power or economic power. They're performing all kinds of new realities and creating a reality, a bad reality for the American people, among other things, by just lying a lot and weaving in some truths to make it plausible, but still lying a lot. So I'll need to continue this in the next video.